In mythologies, Roland Barthes notes, it can be seen that to purport to discriminate among mythical objects according to their substance would be entirely illusory. Since myth is a type of speech, everything can be a myth provided it is conveyed by a discourse. Myth is not defined by the object of its message, but by the way in which it utters this message. There are formal limits to myth. There are no substantial ones. Everything then can be a myth? Yes, I believe this, for the universe is infinitely fertile in suggestions. Every object in the world can pass from a closed, silent existence to an oral state, open to appropriation by society, for there is no law, whether natural or not, which forbids talking about things. A tree is a tree, yes of course, but a tree as expressed by Minot Drouet is no longer quite a tree. It is a tree which is decorated, adapted to a certain type of consumption, laden with literary self-indulgence, revolt, images. In short, with a type of social usage, which is added to pure matter. There are a lot of ways to describe a closed system of symbols. John Truby refers to it as a symbol web. Jordan Peterson refers to it as a map of meaning. There's a whole field of study behind symbology, but I'd like to talk a bit about how such a system can help you as a writer or director. I would personally argue that there's a symbolic core behind almost every story. Marie-Louise von Franz terms the three layers of story as local saga, fairy tale, and myth. The first layer of a story tends to be the local saga. For example, imagine a farmer wakes up to hear a fox singing in human speech outside his house, either by dream or hallucination. Then say he goes out onto the porch and shoots at it, causing it to run off. Then let's say the farmer tells this story and it gets spread around. That's when it enters the next tier. Certain details get changed or expanded by people who pass the story around, in certain cases deepening the seed of the story into a heart that more wholly reflects the metaphoric substrate of humanity. For example, if the detail were added that the farmer saw a woman the next day with a wound in the same place where he shot the fox. Thus, we have an evocation of the animal nature of women, the inherently fluid context of the great feminine, the shadow of the feminine, etc. In any event, we now have a fairy tale, a deepened, stabilized abstraction of the metaphoric substrate. When a fairy tale crosses through a veneer of the political/national, a social layer as I call it, it becomes a myth. For example, let's say the farmer is a conservative and the fox he's shot at is a progressive feminist. The story has gone from fairy tale to myth by crossing the national/political line. The original Cat People had a, to its time, contemporaneous political veneer, but it was really a film powered by its exploration of mythic femininity. A more recent example is Moonlight, which in spite of its political veneer and its ending's embrace of Dr. Spock-style psychology, works because of its mythical elements. Chiron forms a strong relationship with a great father, who embodies both the positive aspect of his archetype as well as his own shadow aspect. The cast also includes the Great Mother and the Shadow of the Great Mother, as well as a broad smattering of the masculine id within the bullies that torment Chiron. However, if you're the type of writer or director who's more materialistic, it's still quite possible to use symbols and myth elements to add spice to your story. Polanski uses Cinderella to infuse a dash of irony to his film Repulsion, about an outwardly innocent, mentally ill woman who's pursued by a sinister Prince Charming of sorts. Romanholiday also references Cinderella by having its heroine note,
"And at midnight I'll turn into a pumpkin and drive away in my glass slipper."
And that'll be the end of the fairy tale.
while reversing the Cinderella model of a princess escaping to become a normal girl and subverting it. Eventually she's trapped again by royal life for political commentary. A note for both writers and directors, your system of symbols doesn't necessarily need to connect back to a myth or fairy tale. You may use the language of flowers, playing cards, or some other image gallery. As always, feel free to experiment.